Hello. Today we have with us Miranda Mason with Senior Medicare Patrol. She deals with Medicare fraud. And so we want to learn all about what that fraud entails. So would you explain to us what it is that you do?
Of course. So, like Anna said, my name is Miranda Mason. I am the Complex Interactions Manager for the Kentucky Senior Medicare Patrol. So, what my program does is we empower seniors, their families, and their caregivers to prevent, detect, and report Medicare fraud, errors, and abuse. And that's a long sentence with a lot of commas. So I like to sum it up by just saying we do Medicare fraud and consumer scam prevention, education, and reporting assistance.
That's great. It's a big problem out there, the Medicare fraud. I know even for myself being a senior, I also get text, emails, calls, always wanting something. So what kind of things are you seeing out there that are like I guess more prevalent scams at this time?
Yeah, so right now when this is being filmed, open enrollment just started, which is kind of peak season for Medicare fraud during this time and also year round, but it really reaches a peak this time of year. But beneficiaries are targeted primarily with phone calls asking them to share their Medicare information, whether that be the plan that they're on and specifically their Medicare number or their Medicare Advantage insurance number. Scammers are really looking for that insurance information because then they use that to commit fraud, either by fraudulently enrolling a beneficiary into an insurance plan that they didn't consent to be enrolled in, or perhaps a hospice program when they're an otherwise healthy beneficiary. Or alternatively, their Medicare information could be used to submit claims to Medicare for medically unnecessary items and services that the beneficiary never needed. So Medicare ends up shelling out billions and billions of dollars every year to fraudsters who use beneficiaries' information for bad acts.
So I read that Medicare fraud can equate to up to $100 billion annually. Is that a fact?
Yes. So the estimate, I hear the estimate vary from $60 billion to up to $100 billion. And that's an estimate based off of what's been reported, which is a very, very small portion of that. And then they extrapolate using other numbers as well. But the true amount lost to Medicare fraud is a number that we can't find exactly because not everyone's reporting these things when they see them, or they're not seeing them at all.
Who's making these calls?
Ugh. People in call centers primarily. I mean, there's so many ways I could answer this question. When it comes to the Medicare scam calls, usually it's people in call centers or folks working for Medicare third-party marketing organizations for Medicare Advantage plans. Or they are just criminals overseas trying to collect information so they can sell it to data brokers. Medicare fraud can come from all sorts of different directions. It can come internally from the physicians that doctors see. It can come from scammers that partner with businesses to submit false claims to Medicare. It can come from people all over the place, unfortunately. So I can't put my finger on any particular answer to that question.
Scary.
It is. Well, even, the younger senior citizens like myself, I mean, I consider myself pretty, tech savvy, if you will. And so what could I do to protect myself?
So my suggestion for the tech savvy senior is to be very, very careful about the information that you share about yourself online. Scammers can use any little piece of information that they can find publicly about you to tailor a scam or a fraud scheme specifically to you, your interests, or your situation. Specifically, I'm talking mostly about Facebook. Something like 75% of seniors are on Facebook and log on at least once per day. So my suggestion is to go into those security settings and lock it down so that nobody can see your posts or your about you information that isn't on your friends list.
Hmm.
That is so I guess they're going to the people's Facebook page and they're finding out what other family members' information. They're pulling birthdays. They're pulling, you know, confidential stuff. I'm guessing like phone numbers and email addresses, and they're pulling all this stuff off of what they can find.
Yes, so they find some of that information on Facebook. They can also get it off of those like whitepages.com type of websites that list people's full names and their address and their date of birth. But scammers combine all of this information that they can find, and they'll use quite literally anything that they can find against you. The example that I always give when I'm talking about this kind of thing with seniors out in the community is, if a scammer wanted to target me, I post a lot about cats. I'm a big cat lover. And so if a scammer was thinking, I'm going to do a person in need scam against Miranda Mason, they could look at my Facebook or my Instagram, see the cats, figure out that I care about that kind of thing, and then use that in a scam. Like they could impersonate my mother and have her call me using spoofing technology and have her say, Miranda, like I'm pulled over on the side of the road. I found an injured cat, but I don't have my wallet with me. I want to take it to the vet. Can you send me money to this address so that I can help get this cat taken care of? I mean, they will use literally anything, even if it's the tiniest little like random piece of information. If that's all that they've got, then they're going to use it.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is.
It's a scary world out there, unfortunately.
So, a child has maybe having a conversation with their parents, and something comes up, and they realize that their parents have maybe been scammed somehow. Like, what is their recourse for that?
So really the first step that I want people to do when they realize someone in their life may have been scammed or fallen victim is to take a deep breath because this can be very stressful. And your head can be spinning with all of the potential possibilities of what could happen. So I suggest take a deep breath. And then next step should be do some research on the exact kind of scam that your loved one has fallen victim to. Whether it's identity theft or romance scam or Medicare fraud or anything else. There are a lot of different ways that you have to respond and recover from these scams. And there are a lot of different places to report it. So you want to make sure you're reporting things to the exact right place so that they get eyes on the case and investigators on the case, and potentially maybe in the future get your money back. But honestly, that's sometimes not really in the cards for most people who end up being scammed.
I'm assuming that a lot of people who are subject to these scams, they might be the kind of person who might not check their bank account or might not really be able to discern the difference between a legitimate piece of mail and something that's maybe fraudulent, or may not be able to spot certain language in phone calls, that are coming in. What would be some best practices that people could put into place, whether it's themselves or whether they're trying to help their parents out, checking their bank accounts often, or like what would you recommend when it comes to these types of fraudulent things?
So when it comes to the prevention side of things, I suggest kind of approaching it from a two-pronged approach. So you want to protect from the phone scams and you want to protect from online scams. So my suggestion for each of those is to protect from the phone scams. I would suggest downloading a call blocking app as soon as possible. There are ones available for free, and there's also paid ones. Like for example, there's Haya and RoboKiller and a few others available on app stores. These will prevent some of those known scam callers and scam numbers from even showing up on the person's phone. It will just automatically go into their call log as a missed call and won't even give them an option to answer that number. And then to protect online, I would say to download some sort of security software onto your computer device, whether that's an iPhone or a tablet. Like me personally, and like this is not an endorsement, but I have a Norton security app on my phone that I pay for on an annual basis. And it notifies me when I accidentally navigate onto a website that might not be the safest. So as a purely preventative measure, doing those two things would get people on a better foot than some other folks that don't have those resources. And then when it comes to being really proactive about making sure it's not already happening to you, definitely being vigilant about checking bank statements and Medicare statements in particular. When it comes to Medicare fraud, at least one of the only really pieces of evidence that something has gone wrong or that fraud is affecting your benefits is by looking at those statements that Medicare or your insurer sends and making sure that the beneficiary actually received every single item and service listed on there to make sure that no fraudsters are using their benefits to enrich themselves.
Anna, what other questions do you have?
I believe, Miranda, that you do have an app that most people could use. They could download it onto their phone. And isn't it something that you send out on a weekly basis?
Oh, yes. So we have our fraud text alert service. It's not an app, actually. It's something that people can text into.
Oh, okay.
So they can text, and I believe this phone number, I memorized it a long time ago, so I'm hoping it's sticking right. They can text 844. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, we'll put that in the notes. That way people can get set up on that.
Sure. Yes, I believe it's 844-796-5678, but don't quote me on that. I can send you something afterwards. But it's our fraud text alert system. You just text into it. Or when we're out and about in the community, people can scan a QR code and then it will text them for them. But it's just one text message that we send out every week on Friday at noon, informing beneficiaries and seniors and caregivers and whoever else signs up for it all around Kentucky about different scams and fraud schemes that have been reported by police or the news or by seniors that we've spoken with in the community. So it just provides like 2 to 3 sentences of passive education about the scams that are being reported in our state, so that if someone receives a phone call about one of those scams, or if they receive something in the mail relating to one of those scams, they're able to remember the text message and be like, oh yeah, that's a scam. I read about that in my text messages, and then they know not to interact with it.
That's excellent.
I would be willing to say that somebody watching this may be watching it because they feel like there was a scam or some sort of fraudulent activity going on, and they find this video. What are the reporting methods? If somebody feels like there's some fraud involved, who do they reach out to, and what's the process there?
So it is heavily dependent on the situation, but generally when it comes to like a scam involving some sort of federal agency, like if it's a scam impersonating Medicare or Social Security or the IRS, for the scams involving those federal agencies, you can report them to those agencies directly, specifically to the Office of Inspector General for those agencies. So, if you're dealing with Medicare fraud, Medicare is under the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. You can report Medicare fraud to the Office of Inspector General for the Department of Health and Human Services. Same goes for Social Security. They have their own OIG. And then, if it's just a regular consumer scam, like a phone scam or business impersonation, anything that's not connected to one of those government agencies, I would suggest reporting it to the Federal Trade Commission. They kind of handle most of those regular consumer scam reports, and they also compile a lot of information to release to consumers about the scams that are affecting everyone. And then finally, if you are just completely lost and you don't know where to start, or you're thinking, wow, that sounds like a lot of work, I don't want to deal with that, people are always welcome to report scams or fraud, whether that's Medicare related or not, to the Kentucky Senior Medicare Patrol, and we will help either submit a report for you or help you get to the right place.
great info. Anna, what questions do you have next?
I really don't have any more questions. I mean, she's answered so many things. Miranda, you've done a great job of educating us on all this fraud. I mean, again, like I said, I'm a person of that age as well, and so it's nice to know that there are all these agencies and avenues to take, you know, if something should happen.
Yeah, very, very grateful that all of these federal agencies and social services programs, they're on top of it when it comes to scams and fraud. This is a pretty big priority for a lot of places right now. So we're very grateful for all of the resources that are out there for scam survivors and their families.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of money being put into the Medicare programs, and to hear that only the reported stuff between 60 and 100 billion with a B, you know, that's money that's being taken out of that system, and that's not helping anybody. That is just, it's all going to the scammers. It's being taken away from the program. So, are there any measures being taken nationally or locally or anything like that to further help prevent this, or is that's kind of what you do? It's awareness around it, and it's ultimately that, right?
Yeah, so the Senior Medicare Patrol program arose out of the need to provide education and assistance about this topic to beneficiaries. We were founded back in we were established in 1997. So that's really what our program is here to do, is to provide that education and then have that other side of doing reporting. And there is a Senior Medicare Patrol in all 50 states plus 4 US territories, I believe. But besides that, on the national level, there are a couple of things that are happening or are in the works to try and mitigate the effects of fraud, including introducing prior authorization for some services in the traditional Medicare program. A lot of the measures that are being taken, there's controversies around them, you know, as is with most political things. But I'm just crossing my fingers and hoping that anything that they do kind of cracks down on the amount of fraud that we have right now, because I see the effects of it and it is monstrous.
Absolutely. How do people get in touch with you if they have questions on things that you've told us, or if they have questions on this in general?
So if people want to learn more about Medicare fraud, or if they think they've spotted something on their statement or out in the community that could be potentially fraudulent, they are more than welcome to contact our Kentucky Fraud Fighter Hotline. That is at 1-877-603-6558. It is staffed by our Kentucky SMP staff. It rotates between each of us from week to week. But you're always going to reach a flesh and blood person. You're never going to speak to any robots or AIs or anything. It's going to be a real person, an expert in Medicare fraud, there to listen and help you deal with the scam situation.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
Awesome. Well, Miranda, thanks for taking your time out of your day to educate us and help provide this information out there to the senior community. We serve Northern Kentucky, Boone, Kenton, Campbell County, but I know your department serves the entire state. So if anybody's watching this, Miranda has thrown out some really good information. And if you haven't taken a look at your Medicare statements, or if you haven't prepared yourself, go on social media and take all that, you know, hide that stuff. Because actually, I'm going to call my mom after this and just say, hey, is all your stuff blocked? I know I can see it because we're friends on Facebook, but can a stranger see your stuff? It's wild what people will do to steal money these days.
Yeah.
When in doubt, Google yourself and see what's out there.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks a lot. I appreciate you. And Anna and I will, you know, obviously keep you, keep your information in front of people so that you can keep helping the folks out there in Kentucky.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.